We both wish that Taco Tuesday was every day. You're listening to The Bearded Theologians, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about The Bearded Theologians, you can go online at www.beardedtheologians.com.
Theologians Podcast. I'm Zach Bechtold.
And I'm Matt Franks.
And today we're going to reference a blog that was written by one of our contributors, Leah Williams, a couple of weeks ago, titled "Conversion Tips for the Converted," and it's spurred quite a bit of conversation. And we want to continue that conversation because that's what this podcast is all about. And there was something that she ended that blog with about building relationships that model Christ's love. And so that's kind of where we want to go today. And talk about how we do that, what those relationships possibly look like. And, in great fashion, like the last few of them, this is an ongoing conversation. And so, we're just going to scratch the surface of it today, but we want to bring it up. So Franks, what does building relationships that model Christ's love look like for you?
I think for me, and given my conversion experience and my faith story, for me, it's really about coming into a conversation or a relationship, not necessarily trying to convert the person to Christ and to Christ's love, but because of the way I treat them, I hope they see those actions as, hey, this guy's a pretty good guy. He definitely loves Jesus and would love to continue that conversation more and to figure out what does that mean for me and have that attraction without having to, have the soul mentality of, I when I go to any conversation, I'm not looking to convert somebody or bring someone in to the life of the church. My whole idea is to get to know them first and to find out where they're at on the journey of life and in faith. And that takes a long time. That's not just something I can do in one setting. But it's getting to know the person and find out, why, where are they at, and then helping them to find a deeper meaning in life and in faith, and to make that connection for them that, Jesus offers us this grace of love and mercy without question. And all we have to do is just accept it and to model that and to try to be a loving and caring person and try to do good and do no harm and really try to focus my life where people can see that I'm really working at trying to stay in love with God. And I think that that's, for me, how I model that. And so for every relationship that I enter into, whether it's just meeting someone on the street or someone, that comes into our office is needing food pantry assistance or just a normal congregant, it's about finding out where they're at and helping them make the connections to Christ when they reach that point. And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes we never get there. But if they can look at me as a model of Christ and the way that I handled them, then I know that I've done what I feel is the right way. And a lot of that comes out of my story and where I've come from in my life and faith. And so what about you, Zach? How does that speak to you?
We've talked about our stories before, but if you're joining us for the first time and you haven't maybe heard my story or Frank's story, I didn't grow up in the church. And when I did start going to church, I went to a church that it was all about conversion. And, Sunday after Sunday and Wednesday after Wednesday, anytime the church gathered together, it was all about how many people that they saved. And even early on in that relationship that I had with that particular church and denomination, I didn't necessarily agree with that. I didn't know how to articulate it in the sense of, I don't think we saved anybody. I think that's God, and that's grace. We may be the vessels and things for that, but to claim that we saved anybody, that was a tough wrestle. I had to wrestle with that quite a bit. And, I gained a little bit more understanding when I came to the Methodist Church and began to understand the theology behind grace and where we believe that God's always working within us and that it's, those types of things. But in that first church that I was in, it was so much about scaring people into a relationship with Christ, asking that question, if you die tomorrow, where are you going to go? And to me, those aren't scary questions in the sense of, ooh, I don't know the answer to that. They're scary in the sense that that's what we're basing a relationship off of, not only between people, but between God and people. And I don't I don't believe for a minute that God uses fear or anxiety or any of those types of things to bring us into relationship with him. You know, if we enter into a relationship with a person based on fear, that relationship's not going to go well. It's not going to last very long, and it's going to end very, very poorly. And so why do we think that the same relationship should be started like that with God? And so when I left that particular church, and found the Methodist Church, the idea that grace is there and grace is sufficient and grace is the basis of our relationships with Christ, that's why we're invited in and how we're invited in, really resonated with me. And so for me to model that to people, compassion is the word that really, really rings in my heart. Meeting people where they are, no matter what, and just being with them. And, you know, like you said, we may never see the fruit of that. We may never see them come to church. We may never see, you know, that change in their lives. But if we meet people with compassion, with grace and love, we start those building blocks. We plant those seeds for God's grace to continue to work and be visible in their own lives as well as ours. And so for me, that relationship with people is just, it's just all based out of compassion. And some days that's really hard, and some days it's easier. But that's what I try to model. That's what I try to really live by, because I was shown that same compassion, and through various people and instances, and you know, people modeled that for me. And so meeting people where they are through compassion, with, you know, little expectation that they're going to do anything different, but keep being who they are and let God do the work, or let God work within them.
And when you say that, that's what's difficult about today, is that people are so afraid of meeting other people, because what happens if you have a difference in opinion, and how do you handle that? And and you know, I think as long as there's a mutual respect of listening, and as long as they're listening to me and I'm listening to them, you know, I find that even though if I disagree with them, I can be reminded that they are a child of God and I'm called to love them and care for them. That even though if they disagree, whatever it is, that it is my job to love them, and to share that love with them, to maybe where they feel the love, that even though we disagree, we can still, you know, cohabitate together. And I think that's where we've gone wrong, is that we've refused to get to know the other, and because we're scared, or they may disagree with us, and they don't look like us. And you know, what if we opened ourselves up to that possibility of sharing grace and mercy just by being us, and showing how we believe in Jesus, and living that out in our daily lives, versus just you know, just going about our business and move along, as you know, like in Star Wars when they move them along. What if instead of just trying to move along, we actually engage people as though they're children of God, and we you know, as it says in Mark 10, you know, we embrace them and hug them. And so, you know, that's something to think about.
It is. You know, I've one of the pivotal moments in my story of being called to ministry is communion. You know, I've wrestled with the idea of being, you know, a local pastor, a deacon, ordained elder, and I truly believe in my call that I'm called to be ordained. I'm called to the sacraments, and it's because of communion. I take communion very, very seriously and very passionately, because it's the example of where we come to God, come to Christ in compassion, and we come to the table together regardless of our differences. And Jesus modeled that. He invited those 12 guys to the table, who didn't always get along, who didn't always agree, who betrayed him, you know, who ran and hid, who got angry, and who argued about who was his favorite. You know, we have all of these different personalities, and yet Jesus invites them to the table for the very same thing. You know, this is my body, this is my blood. Do it in remembrance, and then take it away from here, take it into the world. And every time that we do communion, I see people come to the table from different walks of life, from different areas, struggling with different things, having different joys. You know, looking at people who, you know, disagree with one another, but yet they're invited to the table all the same. And I think that's such a beautiful model and beginning place of how we model Christ's love, that we invite people to the table, whether it be sitting with us or we go sit with them. We meet people where they are, because that's what Jesus does with us. And so I'm deeply passionate for communion on so many reasons, but that's one of them. I've had the opportunity to do communion out in public settings, and watching people come up and come to the table, accept the invitation to the table, who haven't been to it in 40, 50 years, in a long, long time, and just say, you mean I can come? I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. This is the invitation. And it's the same invitation that Jesus makes to me and to you and to anybody else. So come. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the best models that I've seen, and try to participate and live into as often as I can.
And I think that's the whole deal, is that modeling Christ's love, it's truly understanding what that love looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And having a sense of sharing the love is right. I mean, you were right on about the communion aspect of it. I mean, I love communion. I love serving communion. I love when I preside over the table. I think more people are intent when I'm going through the liturgy and watching people just like, I mean, they're on edge. They're like, oh my gosh, this is actually speaking to me. And there's just something about that that's just so sacred that just hits us right where we're at and puts us in a place where we need to be. And I think that's the struggle, is that we get in that place, and then we like, so what do we do now? And it really does come down to, well, I share this experience, and I really believe that we've moved away from sharing the story because we're so afraid of talking about the supernatural and how the Holy Spirit works within the world and within us and through us, and to acknowledge that it takes us to a deeper place, a deeper faith, versus just kind of going through the motions. I mean, and I think that's the model is living by the Spirit, and not being held to a vigorous rigor of checks and balances. Well, I do believe that accountability is necessary in sharing God's love, but I also think that if you refuse to show someone's God's love because of a rule or a law that you have created, or society, or whatever, however that shapes out, that sharing God's love is bigger than that. Paul reminds us time and time again that not to be stumbling blocks for those that are in need of God's grace, and we're the same boat. I would pray that we open ourselves up even more and be willing to listen. And I think that's part of the problem. We don't want to listen to people's hurts and pains, because then it becomes too real about our pain and our suffering, that having to wrestle with that is even harder than listening to someone else's story. And so,
well, and we live in such a selfish culture that we put ourselves first. You have somebody that's telling you a story, that's pouring their heart out, and we're bad about turning it around and being about ourselves. Oh, well, let me tell you what happened to me, rather than just simply listening. That person doesn't need your story. They need your ears. They need your shoulder to cry on. They just need to be heard, rather than, and when it comes from a good-natured place, I think our hearts are in the right place. Oh, we're trying to help. We want to relate to them. They don't need to hear that. They don't want to hear that most of the time. They want to be heard. And we have a really hard time with that as people, simply listening, shutting up and listening.
Well, and I think that's it. As we bring this to a close, I want us to challenge our listeners and those that are watching to how are you sowing seeds of love today? And how are you living a life in such a way that people are going to say, wow, they are a follower of Jesus? Or, oh my gosh, they're a follower of Jesus. Look at them. We don't want it to be that way. We want you to live a life that people see how resurrection does happen even in our lives. And I think that the more we strive for that, the more we listen and pay attention to how the Spirit is at work. It'll be amazing to see how God will not only work through you, but on you as well in the midst of experiences. And so, this week, let's continue the conversation. I think Leia's article, if you haven't read it, please go and read it to understand her perspective on a conversation with the converted, because I think it's important to have those voices. And we're so thankful for her sharing her experience. And like you said, it prompted a whole conversation. And that's what this is about. We're here to have conversations about faith in a healthy way that allows us to share God's love and to show that two people can be separated by the state of Texas and yet still have that conversation and experience in a healthy and in a safe way that we just want everybody else to be a part of that. And so please feel free to share on, Instagram, Facebook, our website, YouTube, however you feel comfortable, and continue that conversation with people around you and people that you are around in ministry with. And so this is the Bearded Theologians. We want to encourage you to check out our website. We've got a great website that has awesome things. We added a really big, like 20-ounce coffee mug that you can, one side, and it's way over there, and I don't want to get up and get it, but one side you can either be Team Zach, or the other side you can be Team Matt as you're drinking it. And it's got our nice little podcast logo in the middle, and it's 20 ounces. So that's a good hefty amount of coffee for the day. Check that out. That'd be kind of a great gift for someone to have.
It would be. If you are inclined to send us Christmas gifts, we clearly like coffee mugs.
So, go to our website, continue the conversation. This is Bearded Theologians. I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold.
And we will check you the next time.
You just listened to the Bearded Theologians podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com.
All right. Welcome to the Bearded See, I can't do the start of it. It's ridiculous. Every time. All right. Welcome to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach. See, I was going to do the intro thing. Gosh dang. Cut. All right. Welcome to the Bearded Theologians.